What if the biggest Oscar wins weren't earned the way you think they were? What if before certain black actors are allowed to hold that statue, something has to happen first, something public, something they can't react to, something they have to stand there and absorb? And what if the moment you thought was unexpected was already approved minutes before it aired? Because there's always a delay, a window where anything can be removed. So why do they leave certain moments in? I didn't ask that question until I was there, watching Michael B. Jordan on that stage and hearing something no one was supposed to hear. And I saw how it works. The silence, the acceptance, the reward, in that exact order, like a ritual sealed in front of everyone watching. And once you see it, you realize the award was never the prize. The night it started, I was standing in a room full of people who all pretended not to notice the same thing. That's the part that stayed with me. Not what happened, not the sound, not the mic, the stillness afterward. Like everyone had rehearsed it. I grew up watching award shows with my older brother. Every February, every spring, didn't matter which one. The Brits, the Oscars, the Grammys. We'd pull the couch closer to the TV, make too much food, and just watch. Not casually, seriously, like we were studying something. He was the one who made it feel important, 7 years older than me. And he had this way of watching performers that I've never seen in anyone else since. He wasn't just entertained. He was measuring, leaning forward when someone hit a note right, going quiet when an acceptance speech landed wrong. You can always tell, he used to say. The ones who made it because they were supposed to, they look relieved. The ones who actually earned it, they look terrified. I didn't understand what he meant back then. I do now. My brother was a musician, genuinely gifted. Not in the way people say that about someone they love, but in the way that made strangers stop talking when he played. He spent his early 20s building something real. Small shows, independent releases, the kind of slow grind that either breaks you or builds you into something that lasts. By the time he was 24, people in the industry were starting to notice. By 26, he was gone, not dead, not disappeared, just gone. The music stopped, the calls stopped. He moved back home, got a job doing something that had nothing to do with sound, and never once explained why. I asked him once, directly, no softening it, and he looked at me with this expression I'd never seen on him before. Not sad, not angry, relieved, like he'd gotten out of something just in time. I never stopped wondering what that something was. I took the job because I needed the money. That's what I told people. Freelance audio technician, mid-level experience, decent references, the kind of hire that fills a gap on a crew sheet without anyone asking too many questions. But honestly, I took it because it was the closest I'd ever get to the world that swallowed my brother and spat him back out hollow. The Brit Awards, London. A room that costs more per square foot than most people make in a year. I remember walking in through the crew entrance and feeling the shift immediately. Not excitement, something more controlled than that. Everyone moved with purpose. Badges, earpieces, clipboards, cases. Every person knew their role. Every role had a boundary. You stayed inside yours and everything ran smoothly. My role was broadcast audio technician. In simple terms, I sat at a monitoring board, watched the live feed, and managed the delay buffer. 7 seconds minimum between what happened in that room and what went out to the world. Nothing reached an audience unless someone in that control room decided to let it through. That was the rule, the one rule that mattered above everything else. Nothing goes out unless someone lets it. The show ran cleanly for the first hour. I was finding my rhythm, checking levels, monitoring feeds, staying invisible the way good technicians do. The kind of work that asks you to be present without being noticed. Then Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo took the stage. I remember the room shifting, not dramatically, not in a way you could point to, just a degree of stillness that hadn't been there before. Like the air pressure changed slightly. I noticed it the way you notice a sound, stopping rather than starting. They were presenting. Standard format. Teleprompter, envelope, applause. And then it happened. A voice. Male. Somewhere in the audience. Loud enough to cut through the room. Sharp, ugly, the kind of sound that doesn't belong in a controlled environment. My hands moved to the board automatically. And that's when I saw it. Channel 7. Already live. A directional mic. Already open. Already active. Already pointed at the exact section the voice came from. 40 rows up. Stage left. The channel was hot before the sound happened. Before anyone could have reacted. Before anyone could have known. I pulled up the setup sheet. Channel 7 wasn't assigned to anyone. It wasn't on the sheet at all. I leaned over to the lead engineer, a man I'd worked beside for 6 hours without exchanging more than technical shorthand. I kept my voice low, pointed at the board, pointed at the sheet. He looked at the board, looked at the sheet, looked at me, and said quietly, so quietly I almost missed it under the room noise, "That channel doesn't exist on this board." Then he turned back to his station like the conversation had never happened. I looked around the control room. Everyone had heard the shout. The feed had caught it clean. Channel 7 made sure of that. The delay buffer was active. We had 7 seconds to make a decision. No one moved. Not confusion, not scrambling, not the controlled chaos of a team handling an unexpected situation. Stillness. Practiced. Familiar. Stillness. The kind that only comes from having done something before. They let it through. All of it. Clean. Uncut. And when it was over, the room simply continued. Levels checked. Feeds monitored. Conversations resumed. Like nothing had happened. Like it was supposed to happen. I drove home that night running the same thought on a loop. It had to be a mistake. Equipment glitch. Mislabeled channel. Human error somewhere in the setup chain. I almost convinced myself. But then I thought about my brother. About that look on his face when I asked him why he quit. Not sad, not angry, relieved, like he'd gotten out of something just in time. And for the first time, I started to wonder, what if he didn't get out? What if he just refused to go further? And what does a system do when someone refuses? I told myself I wasn't going to ask about it. That was the deal I made with myself on the drive home. Keep your head down. Do your job. You saw something that didn't make sense. Fine. Equipment is complicated. Systems have anomalies. You're new to rooms like that. There's probably an explanation sitting in a technical manual somewhere that would make the whole thing boring. I almost held to that deal. Almost. The next morning, I was back on site for a debrief. Standard post-show rundown, levels, notes, anything that needed flagging for the broadcast team. I waited until the room thinned out, then I asked the question as casually as I could manage. I asked about Channel 7. Not dramatically, not accusingly, just technically. The way you'd ask about any piece of equipment that behaved unexpectedly. I framed it as a curiosity, a loose end I wanted to tie off for my own records. The senior colleague I asked, a man who'd been doing this for over 20 years, calm and unreadable in the way that only comes from long practice, stopped what he was doing. Didn't look at me right away. Just stopped. Then he picked up his clipboard, made a note I couldn't see, and said, "Some things on the board aren't for us to understand. Just do your job." He left the room before I could respond. Later that afternoon, he passed me in the hallway. Didn't stop, didn't slow down. But as he went by, he said quietly, without turning his head, "Don't ask about it again." Not a threat, not aggressive, just a fact. Delivered the way you'd tell someone the building closes at 9. I nodded like I understood. I didn't understand anything yet. But I felt it, that specific feeling of a door closing in a room you didn't know you were standing in. I started that night. I told myself it was just going to be one watch through. Pull up the broadcast footage, check the audio timestamps, satisfy the technical curiosity, and move on. 3 nights later, I hadn't moved on. I was watching frame by frame, isolating channels, boosting frequencies, running the same 30-second clips on loop until the images stopped looking like images and started looking like data. My eyes hurt. My coffee went cold every time I made it. I stopped noticing, because the more I looked, the more I found. It started with that night. Channel 7, the timestamp confirmed what I already knew. The channel went live 4 seconds before the voice. 4 seconds isn't a glitch. 4 seconds is a decision. But I told myself, one incident, anomalies happen. So I went back further, the Oscars, 2 years prior. I pulled every available broadcast feed I could find and ran the audio through the same isolation process. And there, underneath the room tone, underneath the music, underneath the ambient crowd noise, a channel opening, clean, deliberate, pointed, before the moment. Before anyone could have known there would be a moment. I went back further. Will Smith, the slap. Everyone remembers the image. Nobody talks about the audio. I pulled the isolated broadcast feed, not the television cut, the raw feed, and ran it back 40 seconds before impact. There's a mic that goes live in his row. Not the stage mics, not the broadcast mics, a directional channel, low in the mix, almost invisible unless you know what you're listening for. It opens before he stands up. I sat with that for a long time. Then I kept going. Monique, her acceptance speech. There's an isolated audio log from that broadcast, not widely circulated, but findable if you know where to look. And there's a channel active during her speech that doesn't appear on any official broadcast record. It's not capturing her voice, it's capturing the room's reaction to her voice. Every shift, every murmur, every held breath. Someone wanted that recorded. Halle Berry. The pause before her breakdown, that specific moment of fracture that played on every highlight reel for years afterward. There's a frequency spike on a secondary channel a full 1.5 seconds before she speaks. Before the emotion breaks through, before the tears, 1.5 seconds. That's not a reaction, that's an anticipation. Lupita Nyong'o. The camera cut to her face, happened 0.3 seconds before her name was called. I ran the timestamp 6 times, 0.3 seconds. The editor cut to her before the announcement, before the sound of her name left the presenter's mouth. Someone knew, Jennifer Hudson. The timing of her win, placed with surgical precision at the exact moment her public profile was at its most raw, her personal life at its most exposed, her emotional state at its most visible. The win didn't feel like a celebration, it felt like a completion. I pulled back from the screen. My notes covered 4 pages, timestamps, channel numbers, frame counts. A pattern so consistent across so many years that the word coincidence had stopped being available to me. I said it out loud in the empty room just to hear how it sounded. It wasn't random. It was a sequence. Humiliation, silence, elevation, every single time. The order never changed. The structure never varied. Only the names changed. And even the names followed a logic I was only beginning to understand. Then I went back further than I meant to. I don't know what made me do it. Some instinct that the pattern didn't start where I was looking, that I was reading the middle of a book and mistaking it for the beginning. I found footage from 1954, a ceremony most people have forgotten entirely, grainy, poorly preserved. The audio quality so degraded that running it through isolation software felt almost pointless. Almost. I boosted the frequency, cleared the static, stripped the room tone layer by layer until I was down to the raw signal underneath. And there it was, a channel already open, pointed at a specific seat, before anything happened, before anyone moved. Before the moment that, when I looked it up, turned out to be one of the most documented incidents of public humiliation in that ceremony's history. I sat back in my chair and didn't move for a long time. 1954. This wasn't a modern system. This wasn't a product of the digital age or the broadcast era or any recent configuration of power and media. This was a ritual, old, patient, practiced. and someone had been running it for a very long time. I closed my laptop, sat in the dark, thought about my brother, about the industry that noticed him at 24 and hollowed him out by 26, about the look on his face when I asked him why he quit. I used to think that look was relief. Now I wasn't sure. Now I wondered if what I'd mistaken for relief was something else entirely. The look of someone who understood exactly what they'd walked away from and exactly what it cost them to leave. My phone rang. Unknown number. But the voice was familiar. Someone from the production company. Smooth, unhurried. The kind of voice that's been trained to sound like it's doing you a favor. "We've got another event for you. Bigger room, better pay." I already knew what he was going to say before he said it. The Oscars. I looked at my notes spread across the desk. 4 pages of timestamps and channel numbers and a pattern that went back 70 years. I should have said no. I knew I should have said no. But my brother was still in my head, and I needed to know how deep this went. "I'll be there," I said, and the line went quiet in a way that didn't feel like silence. It felt like a door opening. The Oscars felt different from the moment I walked in. Not bigger, though it was bigger. Not louder, though the scale of it dwarfed anything I'd worked before. It was something underneath all of that, something in the quality of the air itself. The Brits had felt like controlled chaos, 1,000 moving parts held together by professionalism and habit. This felt like something else entirely. This felt arranged, like the chaos had been removed surgically, like every variable had been accounted for in advance. People moved through the space with a smoothness that should have felt impressive, but instead felt faintly wrong. The way a smile held a half second too long stops being a smile and becomes something you want to look away from. I kept my head down, did my checks, told myself I was just a technician in a room full of technicians. I almost believed it. The Brits had felt like a mistake. That's what I kept coming back to as I ran my pre-show setup. The Brits had felt like I'd stumbled into something. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong pair of eyes on the wrong board at the wrong moment. An accident of proximity. This felt planned, not the show. The show was incidental. I mean, my presence here felt planned. The call, the offer, the timing, the way the voice on the phone had already known I'd say yes before I said it. I pushed the thought down, focused on the equipment. That's when I found it. Pre-show check, standard sweep of all active channels. Channel 7, live. I stared at the board for a long moment. Then I pulled up the setup sheet, already knowing, already feeling the specific cold that had settled into my chest the first time this happened. Channel 7 wasn't on the sheet. I looked at the directional indicator, traced the line of it across the venue map on my secondary monitor, followed it to its target, a seat in the audience, row 12, stage right. I looked at the seating chart. The seat was currently empty. I stood at my station and watched that seat for 20 minutes while the room filled around it. Watched people file into their rows. Watched the careful choreography of a room that knew exactly where everyone was supposed to be. The seat stayed empty until 7 minutes before the show began. Then someone sat down in it. I didn't write down the name. I'm not going to write it down now. But I recognized the face. Everyone would have recognized the face. And I thought they already knew. Before the night started, before a single award was announced, before any of it, someone already knew what was going to happen in that seat, and they made sure Channel 7 was ready. I should have stayed at my station. That's the thing I come back to when I think about what happened next. I should have stayed exactly where I was, done exactly what I was paid to do, and gone home at the end of the night with a check and a story I never told anyone. Instead, I took a wrong turn backstage during the first commercial break. At least that's what I told myself at the time. I'm not sure I believe that anymore. The backstage corridors at an event like this are a specific kind of controlled, narrow channels of movement between vast organized spaces. Everyone with somewhere to be. Everyone moving with purpose. You don't linger. You don't stop. You move through and you get back to your position. I turned a corner and stopped. Michael B. Jordan was standing alone in a corridor. No entourage, no handler, no phone in his hand. Just standing, still, in the particular way that people are still when they're not waiting for anything, not killing time, not thinking through something. Just present in a way that felt almost meditative. He looked up when I came around the corner. Didn't startle, didn't shift. Just looked at me with an expression I couldn't immediately name. I don't know what made me speak. Some combination of 3 sleepless nights and 4 pages of timestamps and 70 years of a pattern I couldn't unknow. Some part of me that had stopped being a technician and started being something I didn't have a word for yet. I told him what I'd found. Not all of it. There wasn't time for all of it. But enough. The channels, the timestamps, the footage going back to 1954, the sequence that never varied. I kept my voice low and level, and I watched his face while I talked. He didn't react the way I expected. He didn't react at all. He just listened. And when I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Not the quiet of someone processing new information, but the quiet of someone waiting for you to finish saying something they already know. Then he looked at me with that expression I still couldn't name, and I finally placed it. Pity. It's already done, he said. What's already done? All of it? Tonight? You? Me? This conversation. I pushed forward. I could hear the show resuming in the distance, music, applause, the mechanical rhythm of a ceremony running on schedule. There's a mic already live out there, I said. Channel 7. It's pointed at a specific seat. It wasn't on any setup sheet. I've seen this before. I know what it means. You don't have to. He stopped me. Not with his hand, just with the way he looked at me. You think it starts on stage? The question sat in the air between us. Then where does it start? I asked. He didn't answer that. Instead, he said, quietly, almost gently, you're going to keep watching. That's the part they count on. I heard footsteps behind me, unhurried, deliberate. I turned. Tayana Taylor was standing at the end of the corridor, calm in a way that felt absolute, not the calm of someone who hadn't noticed the tension in the hallway, but the calm of someone entirely unbothered by it. She looked at me first, not with suspicion, not with hostility, with recognition, like she'd seen someone standing exactly where I was standing before. Like this moment, this specific configuration of people in this specific corridor was something she'd encountered in a previous version. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, he's where he needs to be. She touched his arm, light, certain. He went with her. No hesitation, no backward glance, no signal passing between them that I could read. He simply turned and walked with her back down the corridor and around the corner and was gone. Like the conversation had been a formality, like he'd already known how it would end before it started. I stood alone in the corridor for a long time. The sounds of the ceremony filtered through the walls, applause rising and falling, music swelling between segments, the distant rhythm of a room performing exactly as designed. I thought about what he'd said. You think it starts on stage? I'd been so focused on the moments, the shouts, the slaps, the breakdowns, the wins, that I'd been reading the visible surface of something that ran much deeper. The stage was just where it became visible. The agreement happened somewhere else entirely, in corridors like this one, in conversations like the one I just had, in the quiet before the performance. That's when I understood. I thought. He wasn't being controlled. He wasn't being coerced. He wasn't a victim of something being done to him without his knowledge. He had already accepted it, whatever it cost, whatever it required. He had looked at the full weight of what was being asked and said yes. And somewhere underneath that thought, quieter and colder and harder to look at directly, My brother had gotten close to this world at 24. By 26, he was hollow. He never got the elevation, never got the award, never completed the sequence. I used to think that meant he escaped. Standing in that corridor, alone, with the sounds of a ceremony designed decades before either of us were born, filtering through the walls. I wasn't sure anymore. Maybe he didn't escape. Maybe he just couldn't finish. And I was starting to understand that those were two very different things. And then I understood, not the way you understand something intellectually. I'd had the intellectual understanding for days. I mean the way you understand something when it moves from your mind into your body and becomes a physical fact you carry rather than a thought you hold. The award was never the prize. The award was the receipt, proof that the transaction was complete, public confirmation of a private agreement made somewhere in the architecture of this industry, in corridors and quiet rooms and conversations that never get recorded on any channel, open or otherwise. The sequence wasn't arbitrary. Every step of it was load-bearing, humiliation first, because humiliation is a test. It measures what a person will absorb in public without breaking, without fighting back, without refusing. It measures compliance, not weakness. Compliance is different from weakness. Compliance is a choice. The humiliation asks, will you accept this? And the silence that follows is the answer. Silence second, because silence is the agreement, not the absence of something, the presence of something. A door being walked through, a line being crossed quietly without announcement, in a way that can never be fully uncrossed. Elevation third, because elevation is the confirmation, the public face of a private arrangement, the system showing its work. Look, it says, look what we do for the ones who understand how this works. Look what becomes possible when you stop asking the wrong questions. And the award, the speech, the moment, the image that would play on highlight reels for years, that was the seal. The thing that made it permanent, made it visible. I thought about my brother. I couldn't stop thinking about my brother. He got close at 24. Close enough that the industry noticed him. Close enough that the right doors started opening. Close enough that he could see the shape of what was being offered. And then he was gone by 26. Hollow, quiet, relieved in a way I'd spent years misreading. He never got the elevation, never got the award, never stood at a microphone and delivered a finished speech to a room that already knew the ending. I used to think that meant he got out clean. Now I understood the arithmetic differently. He got the humiliation. I don't know the details. He never told me, and I never pushed hard enough. But I understood now that it happened. The sequence had started, the test had been administered, and he had failed it. Not failed in the way of being inadequate, failed in the way of refusing, of looking at what the silence required and deciding he couldn't make himself that quiet, couldn't make himself that still. He walked away from the sequence before it completed. And the system, patient, ancient, entirely unbothered by individual refusals, simply moved on to the next name on a list that had no shortage of entries. What it left behind was my brother, sitting in a house that had no music in it anymore, working a job that had nothing to do with sound, wearing that expression I'd spent years calling relief. It wasn't relief. It was the face of someone who knew exactly what they'd walked away from, and exactly what walking away had cost them, and had decided every single day since that the cost was still worth it. I handed in my equipment at the end of the night, signed out, walked through the venue the way you walk through a place you know you're never coming back to. Not dramatically, just with the quiet finality of a last time. The parking lot was cold, mostly empty by the time I got to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and didn't start the engine for a long time. I thought leaving would help. It didn't. Because the pattern doesn't stay at the venue, it doesn't live in the building or the broadcast equipment or the carefully arranged seating charts. It follows you. It rides home with you in the passenger seat and sits in the corner of the room while you try to sleep and stands behind you while you scroll through your phone at 2 in the morning. Once you see it, once you know what Channel 7 sounds like when it opens, once you know what the stillness in a control room means, once you understand what an award receipt looks like when someone accepts it, you cannot make yourself unsee it. It's in everything now. Every show, every ceremony, every carefully timed moment of public humiliation, followed by the right kind of silence, followed by the elevation that was always waiting at the end of the sequence. I see the mic before I see anything else. I'm telling you this because last week I watched someone exactly like you lean forward during an award show. I watched their face change when the moment happened. That specific expression, that mixture of shock and excitement, and something underneath both of those things that doesn't have a clean name. That unnamed thing, that's what they're counting on. That's always been what they're counting on. You're not watching the show's watching you back. And somewhere in that room, in every room where this happens, in every broadcast that carries these moments into your home and behind your eyes, there is a microphone already open, already positioned, already waiting. It was open before the moment started. It will still be open after the moment ends. And the people in that room, the ones who go still while everyone else leans forward, they are not surprised. They are never surprised. Now, when I watch those shows, I don't look at the stage first. I look for the microphone. If this story stayed with you, you already know why. Because some things don't leave once you've seen them. The pattern, the stillness, the mic that was never supposed to be there. That's exactly the kind of story we live in here. If you want more, hit subscribe. Every week there's something new waiting for you. Something that makes you look at the world a little differently than you did before. And if you want to go deeper, we just opened the membership every Sunday. Exclusive stories, the kind that don't make it to the main channel. Longer, darker, built for the people who aren't satisfied with the surface of things. The ones who look for the microphone. If that's you, the link is below. Come in. The first story drops this Sunday, like this video if it hit different. Drop a comment. Tell me the moment it got you. I read every single one. And I'll see you in the next one, if you're ready for it.